Welcome back to another episode of Books and Beers. Today we have a very special book, a book about sleeping, which is why we're a little sleepy and in our pajamas. It is Why We Sleep, written by Matthew Walker.
Matthew Walker, all the way from UK. But today we're going to have a podcast kind of situation. We're going to be talking back and forth. I have some points prepared. And we're going to mention a lot, and it's only going to be like 5% of the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the main points I have are only like 5%, so we're not spoiling anything.
Which is one of the biggest takeaways, just too much information in the book. But we'll get to that.
We'll get there.
Yeah. Important thing, though, is that Barney selected these topics without telling me.
I'm going to interview Falcon, so we'll see how he does.
Basically.
We'll see if you actually read the book. Pancho, let's see if he actually reads. So the book is divided into 4 parts. The first part being this thing called sleep. Here he talks everything about sleep. One of my main takeaways that happened to me actually is that driving tired is as dangerous as driving drunk. I actually have a story myself in high school that I was driving after practice. I had morning practice, I had school, I had afternoon practice, and I started falling asleep for periods of time, and I would wake up in the next lane. And then there was a point that I fell asleep, and thank God nothing happened. I kind of crashed into a tree, but it's extremely dangerous.
No, it's huge. And I remember when we started talking about it, I remember that we were meeting with a group of friends, and you had a story, another guy had a story, every single person had a story. I didn't have a story because I didn't drive when I was in high school, but it was huge. And the statistics that he shows are amazing, and especially also talking about truck drivers and how a big portion of truck drivers are obese. And therefore, a big portion of truck drivers have sleep apnea, which means that you're not getting enough energy when you sleep because you snore too loud, and therefore they're more prone to falling asleep. That statistic and that part was insane.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's not something that you hear a lot, but yeah. And by the way, all the tips, all the put the music louder, drink a cup of coffee, doesn't work according to Matthew Walker. And here comes the beer for the day. We actually have a PBR. It's normally known for being a cheap beer, but I actually found this specialty beer. It also has coffee and milk. Another point of the first part is that Matthew Walker mentions that caffeine actually takes 8 hours to leave your system. So for all you afternoon coffee drinkers, I know you're starting working. Mm-hmm. After lunch, you get tired, you drink a cup of coffee. Takes about 8 hours for the caffeine to leave your system. Yeah,
I actually don't drink coffee anymore since the last time I went to Boston to visit you because it made me a little nauseous. And I also read this book and I realized that too many things going on. And so therefore I've cut it out. I haven't used it in 3 months. Sometimes I miss it, but it's
Matthew Walker, huge hater of caffeine.
Yeah.
Heard it here first. Let's see the color. I want to see the color of it.
It looks like one of the Starbucks drinks. It looks like chocolate milk.
Oh, it smells like chocolate milk too.
Right.
So,
cheers.
Enjoy your hot chocolate. Wow.
Wow, this is really good.
we'll get to it later.
We'll get to it.
So, second part, why should you sleep? I think he made it clear that basically sleep makes you immortal. It's the best thing in the world. And I'm going to start, he divides sleep into 2 parts. Mm-hmm. Your non-REM sleep, which is your deep sleep, where you're completely knocked out, and your REM sleep, which we'll talk about later. Yeah. Your non-REM sleep is what you use, according to the book, to learn textbook information. So when you're studying whatever, that's when when the textbook facts that you want to learn get drilled in your brain.
Yeah. It's really hard because he does give a lot of information, but I don't know if this happened to you. Reading the book, you also start remembering Inside Out, the famous Pixar movie. Because that scene where they go and it has all the balls and the balls go from the recent memories to the deep memories, and how there's a joke about a recent song that just came back. I thought that was interesting. I was impressed that he never mentioned it in the book because that's one of the things that I thought about. Because the book is really good, but sometimes it just gets very scientific and it's long. But yeah, that was one of the interesting parts.
And another, that's definitely one of the parts where you should sleep. And then he mentions that it basically is an amazing preventive treatment against cancer, depression, Alzheimer's.
Basically, every single bad thing can be stopped with.
Honestly, every single disease that you can think of, sleep can help prevent it in the long term, which was insane.
No, and that was my biggest takeaway from the book, especially from this part, is the importance of 8 hours of sleep. I did not make that a point when I was in high school. I did not make that point when I was in college. Now working, I do, and especially now that I'm training for a half marathon. Once again, follow my Instagram, Barney, please put it. huge thing. And I've seen the effects. Like if I know I have like a 5-mile run, like I had 2 days ago, I knew how to sleep 8 hours.
Yeah.
So that's a huge thing, and I've been seeing the good side effects from that.
And he mentions that more than exercising helping you sleep helps you prepare so you can have energy when you exercise, which was huge. And it's funny that you mentioned the 8 hour in high school, college you didn't sleep the 8 hours, because I feel like in high school and college and work it's frowned upon if you sleep 8 hours. Like you're supposed to be that hustler that sleeps 5 hours. And if you look at the review in Goodreads, which you can follow us down in the description, Bill Gates actually read this book, he loved it. And he said that early on in his CEO career in Microsoft, he would sleep 4 or 5 hours because he was into the grind, like team no sleep, whatever. And after reading this book, he said he completely changed his sleeping habits.
Yeah, and that was the reason why we started reading this book, because it was recommended by our good friends.
Our Bill Gates. Bill, first name basis.
First name basis.
Hashtag. But anyways, yeah, that's why you should sleep. Basically, every negative thing, disease in the world, you can prevent while sleeping. Then we go to the third part, which was one of my favorite parts. Okay. How and why we dream. This is where the REM sleep, the rapid eye movement sleep, comes into play. And dreaming actually, besides being crazy and like, I thought I never understood dreaming. I never understood my dreams. And according to Matthew Walker, they have a huge use in your brain function, in that whatever you live during the day, you make connections through your dreams unconsciously, which was crazy for me.
There are 2 things that he said that were really interesting. The first thing is, in dreaming, you get 3 of like the main effects from drugs, because you become delusional, because you start seeing things that didn't actually happening. You start believing those things that didn't actually happen, and then the next day
you're disoriented.
And you wake up and you don't remember them. The biggest takeaway from my end for dreaming is that memories are heavily affected from dreaming, because only through dreaming will you forget the emotions that you felt with those memories and actually remember them in a good way. Like if you had a crash or you had like a death in the family, it takes you to be dreaming about that death in the family for you to remember it and not have the same emotions you had when you went to the funeral or when it happened.
Yeah, he explains that when you dream about that part, the emotions detach from the memory, and when you think back to it, you basically got over it in a way, which is crazy. Which is why
PTSD people are now being like, not forced, but there's some way that they can actually make them dream about the bad things that they had before. That way they don't have the PTSD.
They don't have the PTSD. And another point about REM sleep, your brain paralyzes your body so that when you dream, you can't move. Mm-hmm. You can't move because imagine if you're not paralyzed, you're dreaming about hitting someone and then you start hitting your partner or your friend that you're sleeping with. So your brain paralyzes your body. There's something called sleep paralysis, which happens to me. It tends to happen when you're stressed. It happens to 1 in every 4 people in the US. And what happens is that your body wakes up before your brain. So you're still terrible. So you wake up, but you can't move your arms, you can't talk. And since you're defenseless, you feel like there's someone else in the room.
When was the last time it happened to you?
Actually, a long time ago. As I was reading the book, it happened a long time.
It happened to me 5 months ago.
5 months ago?
I was literally sleeping, woke up, opened my eyes, and I could physically see someone run from the corner to behind my desk.
It's terrible.
And I couldn't wake up. And that's why he says that every single alien abduction story usually starts with someone in that situation. That there's someone in the room that they can't attack because they can't move.
Yeah, they can't move. It's crazy. If it has happened to you guys, another thing I found out through the book is that it's okay.
Yeah.
Because I always worried, like, is this a bad thing? Like, am I going to get a heart attack? Because it is scary. Like, I feel my heart going super hard. Yeah. But it's completely normal. 25% of the population
25% of the population get it often, and I think 80% of the people
get it at least once.
At least once. Like, he mentioned that he's had it happen to him before.
Exactly. So honestly, it was super crazy to me. And then he transitions into lucid dreaming, which is
not to be confused
with sleep paralysis. Oh. So you have sleep paralysis here, which is what I mentioned before, and then you have lucid dreaming, which I'm not a lucid dreamer. Yeah. I feel like you're born with it, or you learn it, but it's
Juice WRLD was a lucid dreamer.
Juice WRLD. This guy. That's terrible. Cut the video. Anyways, lucid dreaming is when you wake up in the dream, when you know you're dreaming, and there's even people that can control their dreams, which is like an Inception.
I could have done it to the point where before you said it. So it happens more often. It happens to me more than often that I'm dreaming and it's a bad dream, it's like a nightmare, and then for a second I stop and I say, okay, how did I get this? Because last thing I remember, I was sleeping, and then I go, oh, I'm dreaming, boom, and I wake up. In the book, what he explains is that people can actually realize and say, oh, I'm dreaming, and they can, I don't want to get into the details, but they can basically prove to the person that is tracking their dream, because they're doing an experiment to show them that they know they're dreaming and they're doing like specific movements. It's crazy. One thing though is that I wish that he would have dedicated more time and more pages to talking about that, because that powers.
By the way, this is the shortest part of the book, and in my opinion, it was
the best one.
It was the most interesting one for me. So yeah, dreams. In the fourth part, he talks about sleeping pills.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to focus on, so we don't get into much detail, is the society. What affects society, and the main takeaway for me, because again I suffered from this crash when I fell asleep, because that day I had morning practice. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. had to get to school at 7 because I had morning practice. School started at 8 all the way till 3, and then I had practice from 5 to 7, and I went to my house at 7:30. Granted, and that wasn't my only night that I didn't sleep, because I remember I had a lot of tests. It was an accumulation of sleep deprivation, pretty much. I hadn't slept in a while, and that's something that he calls schools to change. And I had never thought about it, that how hard can it be to change to delay the start time of your school from 8 to 8:30 to 8 to 9. And he mentions an example in the book that there's a school in Minnesota that changed it from 8 to 8:30. And the SAT scores actually went up by 200 points, which is huge in average.
But what I was impressed is, even the high school that we went to, by the way, I side with that. I really hope that in the future they can push back the start time for schools. I think it will be a huge difference. But even the school that we went through that put a huge emphasis on drugs, put a huge emphasis on alcohol, on suicide, on mental health, never talked to us about like driving and sleeping, even though it was a thing that happened to a lot of people in our class. So that's one thing that actually impressed me, and I know that in the future, if I ever become an educator, one thing that I'll really push will be
foreshadowing.
Be sure that you're getting the right amount of sleep, and if you're not getting the right amount of sleep, stay home or have someone else drive, because that's huge.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things that he mentions, is that schools, governments don't really bring awareness to this fact, the sleep and driving, the getting enough sleep at night.
Even though the evidence is super there. It has been proven over and over again.
There's facts, studies, everything. And yeah, it's something that needs, because we had sexual education, physical education, everything, but we never learned about sleep. Yeah. If anything, I feel like I was pushed to sleep less, because that was a culture on the school. Like, stay up till late studying and then sleep 4 hours and then do your homework at school, which is not healthy. After reading this book, it's clearly terrible, especially in your formative years.
Exactly. And he says that that's just a culture that we've been trapped into over the last 100 years, especially nowadays. Besides the book, he does have an episode with Joe Rogan. This is the third book that we reviewed that has an episode with Joe Rogan. I was listening to it a little bit today. I didn't finish it. But he says that it's kind of become like a machismo over sleeping, which is like the CEOs go around saying that they don't sleep much. He also has a point that he says that Reagan was a big guy saying that he slept only 4 hours a day.
Guess what? He got Alzheimer's.
And then that's why Trump, who's also a big guy that says that only sleeps 4 hours a day, he estimates that he's probably going to get Alzheimer's as well. Let's see what happens.
Well, yeah, it's a lot of information, and I promise you it's not even 10% of what the book talks about. But let's get to the review of the beer in the book. What are your thoughts on the book?
So, I really did like the book. I think the content was really good. I had 2 issues. First of all, it took me really long because there was a lot of information and I was never super hooked.
It's 320 pages.
320 pages. And second, which was my biggest issue, and it's super personal issue, is this book is written for scientific people.
Yeah.
He makes a point like explaining how caffeine is bad because it doesn't leave your system for 8 hours. And he has a tendency of just explaining 3 different experiments. When, like, dude, you have PhD right next to your name, I believe you. Like, if you're telling me something, like, I believe you. That's why I purchased the book. But I think that I'm not the person at fault here. I am the person at fault here because this book is just reading for more scientific people. But
yeah, so what you're saying is that, let's say he puts a fact, and then he puts like 3 studies backing up that fact. And what you're saying is that
one would have been enough.
Yeah, and you would have believed him.
Yeah.
But there's scientists or there's skeptics out there that definitely want to see those things. My thoughts are the same. This book is amazing. I actually read 100 pages today. That's how good it was. It just gets a little slow at times because of all the studies.
Yeah. With that being said, my official scoring of the book is...
Oh, we have scorecards now.
3.8.
3.8? And is it a read, must read?
Oh, no, it's definitely a read. It's not a must read.
Definitely.
But definitely a read, yeah.
I think it's a read, and I'm actually going to give it a 4.1. I think I liked it a lot. It's a 4 in my book. Just like Bill's book, he gave it a 4.2.
Oh, wow.
Bill, great minds think alike. What can I say?
There you go.
The beer. I actually have a rough take on this one.
Yeah, I don't know if you can call it a beer. It doesn't taste like a beer. It tastes like a chocolate milk that has somewhat of an alcohol. Interesting because after this video, I'm going to actually go and work a little bit. So, good that has caffeine, even though I haven't had caffeine in a while. 3.9.
3.9?
Yeah.
It's what Falcon says. It's probably not beer. Like it's not. I don't know if you can consider it beer because it doesn't taste like beer. But as a drink, I'm gonna get a 5.
A 5. Wow.
Amazing. It's an amazing drink.
Wow.
Tastes like chocolate. You can probably drink a lot of them. I'm gonna get a 5. First 5 in books and beer. So you want to close out my video? No, you close out my video.
Why close out your video?
Yeah, that's how it works.
Alright, so this is the second self-help book that we're gonna have 2 more in the month of January. New year, new me. So subscribe for that. Leave a comment. Recommend some books. Some books about reading. Some beer.
Any books.
Follow us on Instagram and
tell your friends. Tell your sisters, your brothers, anyone.
Yeah, and be sure to follow us on Instagram as well. And like we just said, subscribe to the channel. See you next Wednesday. Thank you.